The Middle East is facing renewed instability as Israel continues its attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon, directly defying a ceasefire agreement announced by Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. This has led to the Strait of Hormuz being closed once again by Iran, contradicting US President Trump's recent optimistic claims that the vital waterway was wide open. President Trump had even suggested the possibility of Americans and Iranians jointly collecting fees for passage, reflecting a reality where, in his view, anything is possible. However, the situation on the ground presents a starkly different picture. The ceasefire, which stipulated Israel halt its attacks in Lebanon, has been disregarded. Iran cites this very breach as the reason for its decision to temporarily shut down the Strait of Hormuz. While US President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance initially offered support to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the agreement regarding Hormuz is already precarious. Netanyahu's actions are now complicating the geopolitical landscape to such an extent that he risks becoming a political liability for President Trump. This is particularly critical in the domestic political arena, which is paramount for the US president. Despite strong Republican loyalty to President Trump in polls, the war against Iran has been unpopular from its inception. Beneath the surface, dissent has been brewing for some time. Signs of this internal unrest include the public break of prominent Trump supporter Marjorie Taylor Greene with the US president. Additionally, a growing course of tentative and cautious criticism from Republican members of Congress has emerged. The New York Times recently highlighted numerous critical voices on President Trump's social media platform, Truth Social, where many Make America Great Again movement supporters gather. But the most striking shift comes from the influential world of right-wing to far-right radio, television, and podcast commentators. Figures such as Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and Alex Jones are now openly criticizing President Trump and even distancing themselves from him. This is notable because these personalities have long served as a crucial propaganda arm for his political system. The vocal criticism from Republicans regarding the Israeli government is also unusual, as they have historically stood firmly by Israel's side. Previous criticism of Netanyahu's actions was largely confined to Democrats, especially among students protesting the conflict in Gaza. Some of the Republicans now criticizing Netanyahu stand on the far right of the political spectrum, leading to concerns that a much older form of antisemitism, historically associated with the far right, might be resurfacing. Tucker Carlson, a commentator widely considered a right-wing radical and former Fox News host, controversially labeled the conflict with Iran as Israel's war. Following President Trump's ultimatum to the Iranian regime and his threat to destroy it, Carlson publicly called on military personnel to refuse any orders to that effect. On his YouTube channel, Carlson stated that the United States had probably suffered a defeat in Iran, asserting that no regime change, as claimed by President Trump, had occurred. He lamented, "Americans have died, Americans have become poorer. America has become weaker." While acknowledging the ceasefire as a win for avoiding total war, he warned that Israel's ongoing attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon endangered this truce, claiming Israel had brought hell to Christians in Lebanon. Megyn Kelly, another former Fox News host, vehemently criticized the war, President Trump, and Netanyahu. She argued that the United States had, again and again, learned the lesson that peace could not be achieved in the Middle East with bombers. Kelly pointed to insurgent groups as the problem which aircraft carriers could not address. On Piers Morgan Uncensored, she indignantly questioned why President Trump had, without any doubt, believed what "this guy sold." She was referring to Netanyahu, who who had reportedly convinced President Trump of the supposed necessity of military action against Iran through a White House presentation before the war began. Kelly noted that the following day, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Vice President J.D. Vance had reportedly attempted to dissuade him. However, the New York Times, citing insider sources, reported that only Vance had definitively opposed the war. Kelly dismissed President Trump's claim of regime change as nonsensical, suggesting President Trump had been too credulous to see through Netanyahu's lies. Alex Jones, a far-right commentator and conspiracy theorist with a criminal record for spreading falsehoods, declared President Trump to be at the end. Jones accused Netanyahu of manipulating President Trump and exploiting the United States as a shock troop for Israel's own objectives. He even called for President Trump's removal through an impeachment process under Article 25 of the U.S. Constitution, which applies when a sitting president is no longer physically or mentally capable of fulfilling their duties. This same demand was echoed by former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who had previously described President Trump's threat of annihilation against Iran as evil. In the statements from Carlson, Jones, and Kelly, echoes of anti-Semitic clichés are discernible, portraying the Jewish politician as a lying, manipulating puppet master responsible for the deaths of Christians. President Trump, in this narrative, almost appears to be a victim, although Kelly explicitly did not absolve him of responsibility, nor did the other commentators shield President Trump from criticism relative to Netanyahu. This wave of criticism from right-wing commentators serves as an urgent alarm signal for President Trump. It is particularly significant because these personalities are also media entrepreneurs in their own right. If they are distancing themselves from President Trump, it suggests they believe they are articulating the sentiments of their audience, an audience that numbers in the millions across America. What's your take on right-wing critics' turn on Trump, Netanyahu, Amid Iran War? Share your view in the comments. Do you think this will matter in the next news cycle? This video was generated using artificial intelligence.